And the more I studied the mountain, the more I was getting more and more nervous about actually being able to climb it. And I think, not completely unsurprisingly to me, but there have been 3 attempts to climb it by the Czech team, and they still have not been able to climb it. I mean, huge credit to them for making the attempt and getting so damn close, but it's a very, very tough mountain and very dangerous. So I'm kind of, in a way, this goes to the whole point of, I'm all about mitigating risk and taking calculated risks, not reckless ones. And it was clearly beyond my capability. And I think I maybe even subconsciously recognized that, and I pulled the plug.
Yeah. My experience, because you almost hired me for that particular climb. Yep. And I've been a lifelong climber, expeditionist. But I was amazed by your approach, and it seemed it was informed by your military experience. I mean, you take an approach to mitigating risks that feels more like a military operation.
Yeah, that's one of the great things I was able to take away from the military, especially being an intelligence officer, is there's something that we call intelligence preparation of the battlefield. Before you do anything, first, like I mentioned earlier, what is the objective? In this case, it was very clear: climb a mountain. Okay. Now collect as much information as you can and be critical of the information as well. Try and get multi-access, different sources. When you really know the situation, then you can start figuring out, can it work or not? Don't just throw resources at a problem and thinking it'll all work out. Some people tried to get to the South Pole that way and ended up dying, right? So yeah, you approach it in a military way. And sometimes when you're doing military planning or mountain climbing planning or ocean exploration, you'll do that preparation and go, I don't know if we can do this, or this risk is too high. And you have to have the discipline of saying, we're not going to do it. We're going to call off that mission, or we're just not going to do it until things change.
You commissioned intelligence reports. I remember reading some about the area, about the valley.
Yep.
I've certainly never encountered intelligence reports in my mountain climbing life.
Yeah, well, it's a dangerous area. It's tribal, and
there's extremist activity.
Right, and I'm an American, and we were going to have other Western cultures there, and people have been killed or kidnapped on other mountains in that area. So yeah, I wasn't going to walk into this foolhardy, and I wanted to know exactly what we were dealing with. We did the reconnaissance. So I sent a team in to actually survey the area before we went there, which I don't think is normally done either, but that's just how I operate. I don't like surprises.
Yeah. No, I found it to be remarkable. I've been climbing mountains my whole life, and I've never experienced that. So, but it is a dangerous area. I mean, and Tommy Caldwell's story.
Right, and not just that, but also the mountain itself. And I'm actually kind of proud of that. I do cancel missions. Yeah. I canceled subdives. Yeah. I canceled Muchu Shish. And I cancel flights all the time when I look at the situation and I say, nope, not today. It doesn't feel right, or I know it's not right.
Yeah.
And that happened on military missions too, where we'd be flying an operation and we're like, nope, too many variables, or we don't know what the enemy's doing, or we don't know where that surface to air missile battery is. And you have to have that discipline. Yeah. And that's why I think I'm still around.
Are there a certain number of yellow flags or red flags? Like, how do you think about making decisions like that? Is there a certain number of unknown pieces where all of a sudden you start feeling really uncomfortable?
It's the intersection of uncertainty and risk. Things that you are really uncertain about, but are very low risk. Like, what are we going to have for dinner at that hotel? I have no idea, but it doesn't really matter. Or that's really, really, really dangerous part of this military mission, but we know with certainty that it will not be in the critical area at the time we need it, whatever. When you have something that's very risky as part of a plan and you don't really know what's going to happen with it, that's the flag that waves. And if you get a couple of them, well, then you got to go, okay, how can we mitigate it? Or you call it off. Yeah. And that's why mountain climbing is so bloody dangerous, because the big factor in mountain climbing is weather, and you do not control it, and it is uncertain, and the consequences are heavy. Yeah. Which is what makes mountain climbing, I think, the most dangerous thing. Because when you're in the deep ocean, the ocean at least is predictable under the surface. You know the problem you're dealing with, that pressure, that salt water. It's incredibly dangerous, but we know it, and we know it's not going to change. So we can mitigate it, which is exactly what the submersible design does, which is what OceanGate did not do, and they sank.
Meaning, what did OceanGate not do?
They knew the risks, but they didn't mitigate them properly.
Yeah.
Which is really important.
Yeah.
If you have really, really high risk, you have to make darn sure you're going to mitigate it correctly and safely. Or now you're in the realm of uncertainty plus high risk, and then you can end up. It's like being a stuntman. People see people do extraordinary stunts, like in Mission Impossible or things like that, and their heart goes, into their throat. But they've planned it so well. They've trained for it. They've done it many times before. They make something that is actually quite dangerous relatively safe.
Yeah. The expression that's been in my mind in dangerous mountain environments is that it's not the first mistake that will kill you, but it is the second.
Yeah.
That one's always played in my mind when a mistake has been made.
Yep. You have to learn from these mistakes because you're never going to catch all of them.
Yeah. If you could bring 3 historical figures on an expedition.
No, Lord.
Who would they be?
On an expedition or just to dinner? Because they're different. Let's go with expedition. All right, well, expedition, I'd have to bring my hero, Roald Amundsen.
Yeah.
Not just because of who he was and what he did, but just his approach.
Yeah.
He would be a great, guy to look over your shoulder going, what do you think?
Yeah.
What am I missing here?
Yeah.
What else should we do? He'd be the best. Shackleton for assembling a team. Because there's no question that guy was gifted in picking personnel and leading them. The perfect explorer, in my view, would have been a combination of Shackleton and Amundsen. But Amundsen was more successful because he was about the expedition.
Yeah.
And he just got it done. Shackleton, he kept his crew alive, but you shouldn't have to resort to those level of heroics to do it.
There's a lot of,
they could have easily all died. And you never want to be put in that situation. But he was just such a fascinating individual. So let's see, Amundsen, Shackleton, and I would actually throw Jules Verne in there, who we talked about before. Not that he was a big explorationist or expeditioner, but he was in his head. Mm-hmm. And I would ask
in his imagination.
Yeah, his imagination.
Yeah.
I just couldn't leave him out.
Yeah. The Amundsen Scott story, Shackleton, I've always imagined that there's a movie here. I'm surprised there hasn't been.
I think there have been about the individual ones. But
as a period piece, all of them together.
Yeah, I would love a motion picture that actually did like a compare and contrast in a subtle way. Yeah. Just like how Amundsen did things. Amundsen,
they were very different.
Like Amundsen, for heaven's sake, they took dogs all the way down to the South Pole and on the way back. Well, he planned that they were going to kill almost all of them to feed the other dogs. Incredibly brutal. But that was the only way to do it.
Yeah.
And do it without sacrificing the men. What did Scott do? They brought, draft horses and pulling them themselves.
Feels very unpractical.
Impractical. It didn't work. They died.
Yeah.
So Amundsen's approach was more brutal, but it was effective and no humans died. So you tell me which one is the correct methodology. I have my own view.
And Scott reached a point where he ran out of food, knew it, but decided to keep going.
Yes.
That's a pretty crazy choice.
And it's get-there-itis. It's becoming obsessed with the objective. You've seen it happen in the mountains.
Summit fever.
We're so close. Summit fever. We're so close. Got to get it done. But sometimes you have to say, not today. Above Camp 2 on the Lhotse face.
Hands, toes?
Yeah, hands. And I couldn't use the ropes as effectively, and it would have only gotten worse.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to jeopardize the other members of my expedition. So it was the right call, as painful as it was.
Only getting colder.
Yeah,
from Camp 2.
and less oxygen and all that.
Yeah.
And that was an incredibly painful thing to do, was to walk away from a mountain I'd been training a year and a half to climb.